In today's podcast, I'm going to talk a lot about the loneliness. People don't really talk about it because you're not supposed to say you're lonely. But I think if you lost a partner or maybe even a child that you're close to and spent a lot of time with, or a special friend, or your mum and dad, or even your brothers and sisters, I think that you will be quite lonely without them, and you will feel that loneliness. It's a horrible feeling. It's a very deep feeling, like a big chasm, like a big hole in your life that they're not there. And I think you pine for them. I know I pined, and my day felt very different, going from being together every day for decades to not having that person around at all. It was really quite something else. I think the loneliness is something you just really have to get used to. You can fill it up with things and people and television and doing activities, but it's still underneath there. It always feels underneath. And sometimes you might actually feel it more in a crowd or more in a group, which sounds weird, but as I've said before, you can actually feel more lonely and alone in those situations. I shielded myself quite a bit in this last 18 months. I tended not to go to things where I was going to be the only person who was single when there were maybe 4 or 5 couples, because it just made me feel so much worse. I didn't go to events like weddings or some big birthdays, even though the old Wendy would have done it, because just going alone was insurmountable. I just basically couldn't do it. So I think you've got to work out what you can and can't do. You will find that you feel quite lonely in the same structures. For example, because I lost my husband, I felt lonely when I was with the family, which is strange because you should feel more supported, but I actually felt more lonely. And with some couple groups, I felt lonely as well because there was that damn empty chair just looking at me. And I know it was also looking at them. So I think that it's something that runs through basically every minute of your day. You can distract yourself, but it's kind of underneath there. I think because every day you have to do it again, as time goes by, there's a part of you that feels the loneliness, but you just live with it. I just live with it now. I get in the car on my own. I drive to the shops. I sit in the coffee shop on my own. I shop on my own. I've actually been using headphones and playing music. I've got Spotify. So I set myself up when I get out the car, and as I walk into the shops, I've got my music playing and I've got through my phone. And I found that actually helped me quite a bit. Of course, when I have to talk to someone, I take my earphones out. But you might find that helps you. I found that shopping on my own was really dreary. And now when I'm playing music I like to myself, I just don't feel as bad. I also do it in the coffee shop from on my own having coffee. I'll play my music while I might write things out, write lists or whatever. I tend to not try and read in the coffee shop, but you could do that. But I often write things that I want to do or write some things about how I'm feeling. So I just sit there and enjoy my coffee and do that. In the car, I make sure I play the music in the car, either off my phone or use the radio. And if I can go with somebody to an event or come home with them, I do that too, rather than doing it on my own. I meet people in town, I catch the bus and things like that, and drive there to meet people, and I'm still quite active in many ways socially, but I still feel lonely even then when you're waiting for them and you just sit there. And that's where your headphones come in handy, or you ring a friend or send some texts. I think it's important to acknowledge it. It makes it more that you understand it. On a deep level, you make consideration for it. If something's going to make me feel worse and make me feel more lonely, I just don't do it. I mean, I try to do it and then I landed up crying and being a total mess. And it didn't actually make me stronger. Some people have got this attitude, don't face your triggers and do all that stuff. But I actually found I was really stressed enough and having trouble sleeping and eating, let alone put more pressure on. So I just went to things that I felt I could cope. And also I always had a fallback plan. So if I wanted to leave, I leave early. So I always had the car with me or some way of getting home, or with someone who would understand that. You can feel very isolated in groups of people, particularly in places you visited before with your loved one. This will bring everything up because their presence is just so huge that they're not there. It's like overwhelming. And so you need to work out where you are emotionally on those days, whether you do it or not. You can always bail if you want to and stay home. In the end, it doesn't make any difference to people really, because remember, they're not as messed up or upset or grieving like you are. So they're coming from already quite a more balanced, happy disposition perhaps than what you are. So what you're doing is much harder than for them to do it. The loneliness is different to feeling alone. When you feel alone, you know you're alone and you may be happy in your solitary state. That is quite different. Loneliness is wanting to be with someone else, really. That's what it really is. And you can't have it because you can't have it for hundreds and hundreds of hours and days and weeks and months and now years. It's very hard. So don't beat yourself up about it. I think that our society has many ways of communicating with one another, but I just feel people feel actually more lonely than they ever have, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because we don't actually physically see each other as much, and you have that nice energy feeling between the two of you when you sit in the same room. So I would suggest that if you are feeling quite lonely, see someone physically or actually speak to them rather than message or text. It has a much better healing quality to it, I think. And it seems to quell the loneliness a little bit more because you don't have the interface in between as you do with the email or messaging or text. In time, I think we all get used to it. I've got much more used to it. I don't really love it, but it's my life now, and this is my life. And I went from being with someone for 43 years to being basically not in that relationship anymore and on my own. If you decide you're not ready to go and seek another partner as well, you'll have to find ways to actually survive this loneliness. Another person, of course, can fill up that gap, and if you're lucky enough to get that, well, I think that's wonderful. But if you're not one in the space that you can go out yet, or two, don't have anyone else, you will need to find ways to cope. I think there is an emotional element to the lonely feeling. It's not just that you're lonely and the person's not there. I think it's you're lonely and you're pining and you're grieving and you're hurting. You don't want this to be happening, but it is. So I find it kind of builds up and then it'll be really strong for a while. But then it kind of, if you just hang in there, it sort of dissipates and goes. If you can go into other mental spheres, it helps, like watching TV or reading or engaging, like when I'm doing this, of course, on working on the internet. That's a good thing too. The time does go in a different way than when you're doing different activities. I wish you well with this part. I wish there was like a magic pill, an anti-lonely pill that we could take and then we'd all be fine every day. It's just a matter of rebuilding our lives. And rebuilding our lives basically as a person without that person. If you were in a partnership, you are now single. If they were in your family, you are now without them. If they were your friend, you don't have those times together. And we miss that. I think we miss that. I often sit and remember this time or that time, or when we went here, when we went there. And I know they're not to be the same ever again. I can go with other people, but it'll never be the same. Good luck this week. This was the lonely week. I think every week's the lonely week, really. But we're going to get better at this. I know we are. And we will get stronger. And in time, people will come behind us and we will know what to say to them and how often to ring them. And we will know that they actually need that physical presence, not just the interface. I found that on Easter, it was interesting, on Easter Sunday I might have sent maybe 15 texts out to people, and people sent texts back, which was very lovely, but no one actually rang me. It was really interesting. I didn't want to bother people, so I didn't ring up because, from a lot of people, it's a family day. But I was thinking afterwards, it was nourishing, but it wasn't as nourishing as if I'd actually spoken to a few people. And I think that that's where it is with us. It's because we were used to being close to that person and interacting like in the physical world with them. So when you feel lonely, aim to see if you can get some help in that area, like meet someone or as I said earlier, ring them, actually talk to them. I feel that will help a lot, and then you will feel more connected. And of course, they never feel that space, but it's a much more nurturing environment for you than just the interface. Well, I hope you have a good week, a better week, and I will talk to you soon. Love to you.